I wanted to bring you a report on our attendance of the Wake Up Australia protest march, which was held in our city. And the reason this Wake Up Australia march, one of the major themes is in it is about vaccinations. Obviously, there are a lot of anti-vaxxers that have joined into this protest movement, but the reason behind it is obviously the push for mandatory vaccinations. And the thing is that more and more people are waking up to what's going on. So I'm going to show you and offer a few comments on some of the goings on during the protest. It was just a peaceful gathering, really, and people letting their opinions being known in the centre of our city. And these protests were organised all over Australia as people gradually wake up. And the point is, it's not just against vaccinations, it's pro-choice. People want to be able to make up their own minds. They want to be able to be given the correct information and to give consent. They don't want to be forced to do things like this. You have a right, a sovereign right over your own body. And the point is that we see where this is going. And the protest is not just about vaccinations. There were people there with signs about 5G, because 5G is the start of, or the increase of, the surveillance state. People don't want 5G. There has been no proper testing conducted as to the safety of 5G. No matter what you think about it, there's no testing being done. There's no one's been consulted. It's just been foisted on everyone, saying this is what you're getting. And we know that that 5G is a precursor to the surveillance state. And most people are aware, at least the people that were on this protest, were aware of the authoritarian, fascistic nature of what is happening. That governments are forcing people to stay at home, are forcing people to lock down, which is a prison term. Lockdown is a term used in American prisons. They're forcing people to lock down, and they've put thousands of businesses out of business because a lot of these businesses just simply won't recover. And we'll talk about that in a moment as well. So people have become unemployed. We're heading for a Great Depression. And through no choice of their own, they were told to do this by the government, who gave them wrong advice, because it's a big nothing burger. 0.004% is a global mortality rate, and 0.025 is the case fatality rate. And the thing is that the epidemic, no matter what you think of it, has already passed its peak. It's petering out. In every single country, it's peaked and it's petering out, and we haven't got a second wave. So why this push for vaccines? This huge push for vaccines. Everyone's got to be vaccinated when the disease has disappeared by itself. It's followed its natural course and it's gone. We have been subjected to a fear campaign. We've been subjected to neuro-linguistic programming, and it has consequences, because both in New York and in London there have been excess deaths, especially amongst the elderly, and these deaths have been caused because a lot of treatment has not been given in the National Health Service or in New York, and people have been just left to rot or die in the old people's homes. There's been thousands of excess deaths, but there's going to be even more pain because the suicide rates are going through the roof already for people that are distressed. We're going into a Great Depression, so you have every right to be angry and every right to protest this absolutely ludicrous, damaging behaviour. They've got blood on their hands. It's as simple as that. They have. And I'm not exaggerating. But there's more to it than even that. In Britain, in the UK, you have to download the app on your phone, the Trace and Track app. And the point is that you could be anywhere and get a message. You could be in the supermarket, you could be at work, you could be at a wedding, you could be doing anything, on holiday, and you could get a message saying, you have got COVID. we've traced you. You may have COVID. You have to isolate for 14 days. And then you say, well, hang on a minute. Who did I catch this COVID off? How did I get it? I've got no symptoms. I feel fine. How did I get it? Oh, we can't tell you that. It's private. But you have to go and lock yourself up for 14 days. And then we'll test you. And if you still haven't got antibodies, we might lock you up for another 14 days. We might throw away the key. Woo-hoo-hoo. Do you see what's happening here? Do you understand now? This is a tool to stop dissent because they don't want any yellow vests protests like happened in France. They want the people to do as they're told until they get their 5G rolled out. But it's even worse than that because I'll just take the UK again, for example. The data, the health data from the NHS is shared with GCHQ, which is the General Communications Headquarters of the UK. And GCHQ, in turn, has works and cooperates very closely with, I think they might even be embedded with the Israelis. The sort of cyber unit acts based on Unit 8200. So on the one side, they would turn around to you and say, "Oh, well, we can't tell you who you've caught this COVID of, even though you're asymptomatic. Or it's privacy." But on the other hand, all your data is scraped up and shared out amongst everybody. It's absolutely scandalous, and it's not about a virus. Trump keeps saying we've got an invisible enemy. You know, we've got to fight the invisible enemy. Well, I'll tell you this much. We certainly have got an invisible enemy, and it's not a virus. Now, I'm just going to show you a bit and narrate a bit from the protest. Here is a lady with a shirt on that says no 5G. Another one, my body, my choice. Here's my lovely wife in the middle, democracy, free choice. And again, there's me standing amongst the crowd. Stand up for freedom now or beg for it later. Very appropriate. See, the people all stood there listening to a few speeches. Peaceful rally. There's me with a sign. The protest was peaceful. There was no problems anywhere. It was mainly, normal people, middle class, sort of average day Joes just protesting. And at one point I got talking to a lady who was sort of our age, and she was a teacher, and she started talking about vaccinations and other things, and she was with another lady, and they both started talking about things that had happened and what they had observed, and we stood there talking. This was after, more or less, the protest had finished by then, and we were stood in the main street talking. There were other people still with boards and things further up, and at one point we'd been talking for maybe 15 minutes. Just stood in the middle of the road, just talk in the middle of the shopping mall, as it is, because there's no traffic there. It's just foot traffic, and we were talking as you do, nothing wrong. And at one point, a policeman just came up to us and said 1.5 meters apart, because we were standing, obviously, according to him, too close. He said it to my wife first, and she looked and thought, what is it? What's he talking about? 1.5 meters. And because she thought, are we in the way? Are we in somebody's way or something? And I was talking to this teacher, to this lady. I hadn't realized what he said. So I turned round, and the copper stood right in front of me, about 12 inches away, about a foot away in the Old English measure. And he said to me, 1.5 meters apart because of COVID. And I just looked at him and said, you're stood right in front of me. Can you please stand 1.5 meters back? I said, you're making me frightened. You're going to give me COVID. And he looked at me and he stepped back, right back. And I had to really try hard not to laugh. And then we all looked at him, and he looked really stupid and sheepish. And he turned away, turned around, and walked off. And that's what we're dealing with. That is what we are dealing with. That people, I'll tell you something else. There were lots of people walking through the main street that were not protesting, just ordinary people walking through the main street, shopping or doing a bit of this or that, because not all the businesses are open. The big shops are, but a lot of the big small stores are still not open. And there were a lot of people walking down the main street. This is the main shopping mall, and none of them had masks on. None of them had masks on. They were just walking, doing their business, minding their business, just walking about normally, right? And the only people that had masks on were in front of the Apple store, believe it or not. In front of the Apple store, they had people queued up outside waiting to go into the Apple store. All of them 1.5 meters apart, all queued up, lining up to go into the Apple store. And out front, they had 2 or 3 people shepherding the customers. And these 2 or 3 people that were stood outside had masks on. No one else had masks on. They had masks on. And they were looking at us as people walked past with these signs. They give us a funny look. And I turned round to one of them and tapped my mouth and said, "You know that masks are now the new tinfoil hat, don't you?" And he looked at me. If looks could kill, he looked at me. I said, "You know that masks are now the new tinfoil hat. There's no cases in South Australia." And he looked at me, and I just thought, well, people, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's just craziness. But now I wanted to say a little bit about what happened next. After that, it was starting to get a bit cold and very windy, so we walked out of the city centre and crossed over to those who know a section of Adelaide called North Adelaide, and we went looking for somewhere to eat because I said to my wife, "Oh, it's a bit cold now. Let's have something a bit nice now." And we went. We looked at the Lion Pub, which does some really nice food. It was shut. I looked at 2 or 3 other places, all shut. And I thought, oh, for goodness sake, these businesses are just not going to survive. I mean, this is a Saturday afternoon. And they're all closed. Well, fortunately, we came across one that was open. I'll just show you. It was a Vietnamese place, and it was quite busy, and people were acting normal, and they were sat at their tables, and the waitresses didn't have masks on, and people were just acting normal and eating their food. And this is what I had. It was beautiful. It was a pork and rice dish. It was yum, and you can see at the top part, you can see some spring rolls, but they were like noodles, crunchy on the outside. It was delicious. And my wife, Mandy, had the chicken. I had the pork. She had the chicken. I think I've got the shots the other way around. The first one was the chicken that you saw, and mine was a pork dish. But it was delicious. We really, with a nice cup of coffee, we ate a load, and it was yum. But the point that I'm trying to make is that these businesses were open. This one, the only one we found in the whole street, it was open. And we really enjoyed it, and it was busy. People were eating, people were acting normally. They weren't shivering in fear that they were going to die. They were all having a nice meal. And but it was like a ghost town everywhere else. Now, how are these businesses going to survive? Seriously, how are they going to survive? It's what they've done to people is just shocking, really shocking.